Emmanuel?
Attucks High, my Attucks. Attucks is just a microcosm to a larger issue often forgotten about in our history books. North Dade, Mays, Carver, Roosevelt, Lincoln, and many more black high schools all suffered a similar fate of having their schools shut down. The ability to run highways through our communities, riots, and lynchings, the closing of several black high schools in Florida is oftentimes forgotten about.
Oh, no.
Crispus Attucks tried to reason with British soldiers about their disrespectful and abusive behavior to the people of Boston. The soldiers' response to the encounter was gunfire. The great leader and former slave Crispus Attucks was the first American to die in what we know today as the Boston Massacre and led to the fight for this country's freedom, the American Revolution. Journey with us, if you will, to a time where people of color were denied access to equal education. In 1908, the first school was started in a church with just 9 children. In 1910, the school site was relocated to another building, which is now Dania Beach Boulevard. 2 years later, the school was returned to the church. In 1914, land was purchased and a building was constructed on what is now Ely Boulevard by Joseph Sidney and Mr. Mizell. About 1920, Broward County purchased the property and built another school on the site. Judge Lincoln Brown, the first principal, renamed the school Crispus Attucks. Judge Brown was succeeded by Professor J.A. Ely, and Professor Ely was succeeded by Mr. Arthur E. Williams. These are the stories of our ancestors in old Attucks High School.
We thrive, we blossom in that. And I mean, they get, a lot of us like that, the chorus, somebody got your hair cut the yard, shoot the take all away. And this song so have to do that. This is on a forge your watches. But that was a part of what this was as a community that we looked out for our elderly and we looked out for our youngsters. And I'm not saying that there were not crazy things going on in this town at that time. But the fact of the matter is that the community had a sense of purpose. And Attucks was a part of that purpose. We had community meetings at Attucks.
We were all competitive, to tell you the truth, and we strive to be good and also respect our teachers. You know, teachers they actually demanded respect, and we gave it to them too. Yes, I was involved in clubs. I was in the math club, the Spanish club, and actually I was one of the queens at one time.
Okay.
And so, you know, we always involved. The teachers actually encouraged us to get involved in different organizations, and we strive to do that. You know, we tried to live up to their standards that they had set for us.
I was, I don't know, I loved it. I went there for 12 years, first grade to the 12th grade. I went there for 12 years. And I know nothing else but at it. I didn't know, like middle school or anything. It was called Attucks High School from the time that I went there. It wasn't Attucks Elementary or Attucks Middle. It was Attucks High School in the whole 12 years I was there. I uh, I remember being in the first and second grade. It was one of those things where the bigger kids in high, particularly in the high school area, because we were separated but not separated at the school because there was a point on the school that all the elementary kids were over here, and if you went in the hallway, so to speak, that was the high school, and it was divided, but it wasn't divided. It was like you knew that was the high school over here, and they knew that this was the elementary school over here. Because I always remember I got my arm broken when I was in the second grade, and there was a kid, a guy, actually picked me up and took me to the office because my arm was broke, and he was a high school guy. I always remember this guy's name, and I tell people about the story. And it was a guy that we, at least I used to be scared of. His name was Bennett, I think. Yeah, Wallet. No, not Wallet. But that was Harco, and I can't think of the other guy's name. But Harco Hamilton, if you remember, I don't know if you remember him, right? Harco Hamilton, another guy. Because one of the things, as big kids, they used to lock us in the bathroom. And we, as elementary school kids, you 8, 9 years old, you didn't want to go in the bathroom by yourself because you wanted to get locked in the bath. In hindsight, you could get out because the window was there. But we, as kids, you didn't know that. But that was one of the things like, go in the bathroom by yourself because Hako and them will lock you in the bathroom.
We had very good cooperation, and we didn't learn that. I didn't learn that until well up in age, well up in going into various businesses. That the teachers we had really was there to help us. They insisted on our getting the education. They did not spare the rod. And because they did not spare the rod, and I mean that board that they used, it allowed us to really do our homework, to focus on education. I played sports. I got involved in football. I got involved in track and field. And those are the kinds of things that I enjoyed.
Big in sports, he and Attucks, in basketball and football and baseball, swimming. He
That court, and the court sued him about it, and now they're all with them community. All that,
Long. When time, the football stadium was packed, the gymnasium was packed, and the same thing legally. These were our rivalries, and if we didn't win the game, that basically was our season. We had to beat those games, but it was fun. It was fun.
It was very physical. We had, as a matter of fact, we had Dillard. We had Blanche Ely, because that was the Professor Ely's wife school. But he left when I was in 10th grade. He was there, so he left 11th and 12th. He wasn't there, but still, if we won a game and we were there, we had to get on the bus or you had to run. And we would just ride, but it was fist fights. It wasn't guns and stuff like they do now.
The,
Professor Ely, now this is what I was told. Now I hope this is the truth. They would say that if Ely would play Attucks, and if Attucks would win the game, that Professor Ely would have to sweep out on the porch.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know how true that is.
We would have parades in the street with the majorettes marching, the band playing. You know, it was very exciting. And then the day of the game, same thing. Halftime, the band played, and just everything was just very exciting because that's what you live for, the excitement and for the games. I don't know anything about us throwing the games to Ely. And maybe that's just a rumor. I don't know about that. You know, I think we tried to beat Ely, as far as I'm concerned. We tried to beat Dillard, you know, because we had a rivalry with Dillard. You know, we were Dania and Hollywood combined with Hollandale and College Rangers at the time. It was called College Rangers. So one school versus all those other schools. So, you know, we tried to beat them. We didn't try to lose the game. It was very exciting, you know, with the parades and all that. So it was a good time.
Sadly, 1968 was the final school year for the Eagles. A decision was made to ensure signs of progress, but not everyone agreed with the decision to turn the high school into a middle school. Looking at it from today's point of view, was this a sign of progress or a sign of something worse?
should have remained a high school. What we didn't have the night or the evening that they held, school board that is, held a meeting in the auditorium of the school to decide what should become of Attucks. Should it be remain a high school, or should it become a middle school? The black parents did not, one, come out like they should have, and many of those that came out didn't really know the issues that well. Therefore, they just sit there. A fellow by the name of Tommy, I can't remember his last name, but he lived right across the street from the school. He became a police officer, also a Dania police officer. But he walked those floors fighting that they keep Attucks. And why is it that you want to change the school when the school have not shown you that they're incompetent? And you just did not have enough parents to get up and challenge. One of the things that hurt those that were there, including me, because I was there one of the nights. I was in college at the time, and I came home, and I voiced my opinion.
It breaks the sense of community because the children have a sense of belonging when the community, you know, and you know, like they have had several meetings. They like to take it down even further. They want to, like, you know, just disband it all together. And I don't know, it might be a done deal, but I don't know, because the last meeting that I went to was before COVID happened. But yeah, they're trying to like say something about down enrollment, enrollment being down. So they want to like phase it out and put everybody in one school, but not in that school.
I was hurt with the district of Broward County, and I was hurt because our parents did not step up to keep that as a high school. In other words, the lack of knowledge was not there because they didn't understand what was going on. And by the time they did, they had made the transition to make that a middle school. It was, to me, it was very underhanded the way that Broward County did it. And I thought that we were going to, and I still believe that it was not very good for us because we had so much history, so much that was going on for us with doctors, with lawyers, with football players, with basketball players, with teachers, with politicians, with community leaders that were roosted and regretted out of Attucks High School. Now we were going to be losing all of that. And then not only were we going to be able to lose all of that, but we're going to be losing a part of our history. And that's what saddened me most of all. I was very disillusioned by the lack of participation of our parents because they really truly dropped the ball on this. And by the time they did it and we tried to regroup and try to stop it, it was too late for us to do it.
But now, when you look at Attucks, it was a very unique situation because, as you can see, Liberia was such a small community. But our students draw from Davie, you know, and then we had most of our whole core of our students from what is called West Park. Today we used to call it Carver Ranches. And then you had Hallandale Beach, you know, and another little small community over off the US one called Oget. So our student body drew from so many different areas until there wasn't no core. So we couldn't really mount up a fight to kind of keep Attucks open because, you know, everything was so divided. You know, I mean, of course, the people in Hallandale wasn't going to argue when they had a Hallandale High School built right in the community. So you weren't going to get no fight from them, you know? And then most of the kids in West Park, they were going to MacArthur High School, which was nearby, and you had Miramar High School, you know? So that's mostly where their allegiance went, you know? And then, of course, they built Cooper City. Cooper City High School is where all the Davie kids, you know? So they began to go there. So we really wasn't left. So during the Vietnam War, as just like myself in the 60s, even though I didn't go to Vietnam, but I was in Germany, most of all of my classmates and most of all the guys in my community, we was fighting the Vietnam War. You know, most of us was in the military.
There's a good outpouring of their alumni who support that school with their money to do things that we would have done for Attucks if we had that same opportunity. And that is a regret from that time. I had nothing to do with the changing of that, but nonetheless, it was still a regret to me. Some of my best friends, specifically a young man named Alvin Warner, South Brown, and as state champion. And I look back at that and I said, we don't want a state championship. Yeah. If Alvin and his brother Anderson were starting as forwards for our team.
It was like somebody broke my heart. Okay, because it was, you know, we had that camaraderie, that community type thing. You understand? The teachers, the principal, even though we got a lot of punishments for things that we did that we shouldn't have been doing, but those things I look at now help me. Okay, so it was disappointing.
It was done without
Parents.
anyone who was an alumni having any control over what they were going to do. It's almost like we have fought tooth and nail to keep Attucks middle in school. Now,
They want to turn it to a trade school.
they want to take it and turn it into a trade school. But the alumni, we've had, you know, we go to meetings and we're letting them know it's not going to happen. Because we need Attucks to remain in this neighborhood. Like, why would you take a beautiful school like Attucks who has everything to offer and turn it into something else? This is
Guys that were playing football, they went in. In fact, some of them ended up in pro ball. They went and left and went to Dillard and graduated from Dillard. Okay, because we didn't have a football team at that time. But I was in the military during that time.
Okay.
But from what I understand, that they had meetings. They had a meeting about the transition from
Quiet meeting.
quiet meeting that a lot of people didn't know. And I think they took a chance, and they did it underhandedly, for a lot of people in the community not knowing about that. I think if we had been a proactive like school like Ely, or proactive in the community, and they knew about it, and people come out and they change that, and by Ely still being a high school, Dilla still being a high school, and we lost a lot. When we lost our high school, we lost our community.
I just really, I always try to talk addicts up, like for kids coming into the school and just talk addicts up because it's still a good school. They have good teachers and they just need to like have some history in their own school and in their own community.
Once the alumni going on, I'm concerned about what will happen to this middle school.
Yeah, we're gonna lose that.
We lost. Take out land and that can keep if we don't do it now, it's a loss. It's a loss. That's my concern for this school.
We had a different perspective with young people. We worked with them in such a way that we had their confidence, we had the interest of parents, we had the interest of communities, and we had the focus of those communities directed toward these institutions. You are that. Good teachers make good students. I said, yes, that is true, but the other way around is students make good teachers.
Hello,
That was really
Can you-
excellent. Unfortunately, parts of that we couldn't hear, unfortunately. And I think when we upload this to the YouTube, if people want to watch it again to get in the missing gaps, because I was listening intently and there were some things I couldn't hear. And I think yeah, I know. I think it was an internet connection that kept scrubbing, so it would stop. But I got a lot of it. I learned stuff that I never knew about Attucks, and I loved it.
Well, I mean, just any questions, I can definitely, I'm here to answer them all. And there will be some in-person screenings, which would, my preference would be is going to be happening soon, this month.
So I got a couple questions. So one of the pictures that you showed of the students, it looked like it was in the 50s. And it looked like Attucks had uniforms. Was there a uniform code for the students? Because they all had like the same sharp outfits on.
Yeah, so in that photo, I want to give a big thank you to Miss Joyce Grisby for allowing me to digitize all the Attucks yearbooks. So a lot of those photos were like from like where they were wearing like the uniform with Attucks was like usually like sports photos where they were playing either baseball or track and field or football, but they did have a sense of dress code where you had to have your shirts tucked in, you had to dress appropriate, you had to have your hair kept nice. Women had to wear like long dresses. So it was like a real I guess I could say conservative
Yes.
type of method that they had back then, because their principal, Professor J.A. Ely and Professor Arthur E. Williams, were very religious. So they were, the clothes that you may see some of the young folks wear now is even how my hair is now would be a no-fly zone.
No-fly zone.
Yeah. Because even some of the stories that I've heard where, like, if someone's hair was not combed well, you had to go home and make sure you were looking better. If you were not smelling good, you had to go home, shower. It was a real strict school, but it really helped the kids out, I believe.
Also, it kept coming in and out, but it seemed like when the end of segregation happened, that a lot of the people that were going to Attucks felt a loss of their community school because you guys all got split up. So you guys had this really community school where everybody knew everybody, and all of a sudden you guys are blasted all over the county and other students are blasted in there. Was that the feeling then, that you kind of lost your school when that happened? Because I never looked at it from that angle. For me,
So from what I was told in many of the interviews is that there was many different things that happened for the school to close. It wasn't really like a one-shot thing. It was on the parents, for not, really being as proactive as Dillard was, or Blanche Ely High School, because there was a concentrated attack to close those schools as well. And you might not have seen it due to the lagging, but there was a B-roll shot of the Blanche Ely High School going up against the state of Florida when they closed the school in 1970. And that was a fight to make sure that Blanche Ely does not suffer the same fate that Attucks did. And what happened was, depending on where you live, because Attucks housed many students, the kids in Liberia ended up going to South Broward. A lot of the kids from Dania Beach went to Hollywood Hills. Many folks from Carver Ranches went to Miramar or MacArthur, or the folks in Hallandale went to Miramar or MacArthur until Hallandale opened in 1973. Then you also had the folks in Davie that went to Cooper City that opened in, I believe, in 70 or 71. And then you also had a small town that is now known as Aventura, that was once a small Black community called Oges. They ended up having to, go to some of the schools in Miami. So it was a real big impact because, it was a point in time where you were just walking to school, and now you got to drive all the way out, Hollywood Boulevard, Pembroke Road to go to MacArthur. So it was a bit of an attack. I don't say attack. One of the downfalls was that. Another thing too, which was not really addressed in the film, but was the economic impact on the community, because they had a lot of businesses around Attucks, and many of the students would go there for breakfast, to get their snacks, to get some supplies, and also during lunch hours they were able to go off of campus. And when they were able to go off of campus, they were able to go to the restaurants in the community, or places to get something to eat or something to drink and snack on. And then when the school closed after 68, that was another thing that impacted the community. And if anyone drives through 22nd Avenue right now, or on Dania Beach side on J.A. Ely Boulevard, you don't really see any businesses or anything anymore. So the impact of the school closing left a big impact that we see today that many of us may not even really have the presence of mind to really speak.
Thank you for making us aware of that, because I don't think a lot of people realize that. And before we take any more questions, I would just like to welcome our District 1 Commissioner, Carol Shuham, who's a big supporter of history, all history. And I think she would like to say a few words. And welcome, Carol.
Thanks so much, Clive. Emmanuel, thank you so much. I just wanted to say, I think you're being somewhat generous to the school board, because even though maybe in hindsight the parents could have done more, I think, maybe in today's world, a more sensitive school board might have seen some of the long-term effects to the community, but they didn't care. And so I think that we shouldn't sugarcoat it. Nobody cared. And we saw so much of that in those years, and the destruction of vibrant communities, just like you said at the beginning about putting highways through things or whatever. So that's my takeaway, is that your narrative is generous to the school board at the time. But what I really wanted to say, for those of you who are not insane followers of the City of Hollywood agenda, that on Wednesday, I am very honored to be a part of a proclamation of a day in honor of Mr. George. And so for anyone that is watching or attending our meeting on Wednesday, we are acknowledging the amazing contributions that you've made to the community, both culturally, educationally, and also in the world of art. So it'll be a big deal, and I just want to let those on know that you can tune in on Wednesday and watch, or please, you can come in person. But I personally just wanted to take a moment, Emmanuel, and thanks so much for what you do, and the preservation of history that really without you would be lost. So thanks so much, and thank you, Clive.
Thank you, Carol. Well
Well
done.
Appreciate it. I really appreciate that. I just wanted to say there's a website called newspapers.com via Ancestry, and it's one of the largest collection of newspaper archives. And that is where I was able to get some of those clippings of the Sun Tatler and Fort Lauderdale News, and able to read some of the interesting tidbits when the school was closing. And you are right, many of the superintendents did not really care. But then also, it is a multifaceted issue. You did have many Black folks who believed that this would be a good thing, but in hindsight, they did not see that. And then you also have many folks like Alcee Hastings and the NAACP, who was really pushing to close the school down. And this is not to, I know he passed away last year, and this is not to put anything on him, but I know that one of the quotes in the Tatler, I believe it was a June 1968 article, where he was mentioning that, hey, we're not here to save any Negro schools. And it was just a very eye-opening to hear that. But it was a very multifaceted issue when it came to Attucks. And I always think about the what if Attucks would have remained a high school, what impact would it have had on the community of Liberia? What positivity would it have had? When you look at Dillard is still a high school, and many folks today are still able to support that school, like Rodney Collins was saying, with their money. So when students at Dillard need computers or uniforms or something of that nature, they call up their alumni association. Attucks 1968 was their final year, so they don't have that strength of support like that. And another thing I would love to say is, for the future of the community, 1968 was their final year. So that means that many of the folks that went to Attucks are either 71 turning 72, or they are 72. That's the youngest. So when we look at the next 15, 20 years, what is going to be there for the future of the Attucks Alumni Association? So for me, it's very important to be able to connect the youth with the Alumni Association. My alma mater, South Broward High School, is now having, yes, the Bulldogs.
That's right, buddy.
South Broward High School, kudos to South Broward. They have what is a BSU, a Black Student Union. And what I'm going to be doing is having a few of the alumni come out and meet with the BSU president and some of their the folks in the BSU, and be able to bridge that gap. whether they are called grandchildren of addicts or heirs to addicts, that way, so that, you know, when our elders leave us, their stories can be preserved. And another thing I do want to say too is that the oral history interviews, without that, there is no documentary. I wanted to let that be clear. Without the scanning of the documents and the archiving work, there is no documentary. And all of this is going to be at the African American Research Library in their special collections department. And according to Dr. Oliver, I'm not the youngest person in the county with a collection, with the special collections, but I'm the youngest person in the state of Florida. And to me, that's a bit sad because I'm 33. We need to have more younger people of all colors, of all, you know, what, short, tall, gay or straight, whichever, to be able to get into preserving our stories and to be able to start doing more oral history. Talk to your neighbors. Just have a conversation about things. Record these conversations. Understand that there's going to be a point in time where you're not going to hear their voice anymore. So we really need to start preserving our stories.
I think we're twins, Emmanuel.
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's exactly what I feel like.
Yeah, we need to, because right now, too many folks are leaving us. I think about this program that I'm in, and I want to give a big thank you to encore.org for the fellowship, for allowing me the funding to do the oral history work. But I just wish that there was more emphasis on this. Many folks like Coach Earl Washington, who you've seen on the mural of Attucks, who passed away last year. Cyril Pender, one of the greatest athletes to ever come from Hollywood. He played for the Philadelphia Eagles. He played for the Chicago Bears. He went to Attucks High School. And not only was he a great athlete in football, but he was a musician in the band. And one of the stories that Mr. Collins would say was that Cyril Pender would perform in the first half in the football games, and then in halftime he would get dressed and perform in the band. And then after he would perform in the band, he would go back on playback on the field. And not only that, but he was one of the most intelligent people to graduate in his class. So it wasn't just them just being dominant on the field, but just imagine if one was to get that story. But now he passed away. We're losing too many people, and we really need to start talking to and start recording. We have cell phones. We have all kinds of devices. We really need to start preserving our history a lot more.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have more questions for Emmanuel? You have to unmute, Dr. Candace.
I do. I have a question. I want to thank you for that work that you're doing. It's fantastic, and it shows a very rich heritage. I was just curious because I grew up in Boston, and so I'm a transplant. Only in Hollywood for a few years now, but and I love the area. And I was just I'm also a prior school teacher, so I'm still teacher at Broward College. But anyway, less about me. I was just curious, how were there other schools that were closed, or was it just Attucks that was closed? I guess they probably didn't close the schools from the white areas, or I was just curious about other schools. Or were there many people at that time, or?
Well, I would say that great question. And last year I started my nonprofit, the Black Orchid Foundation, which is centered around a concept which is titled Mobile Archive Building. And mobile archive building is going to be a tool that many people can use in whichever facets, in whichever interest that they have. And for me, is to be able to tell the stories of Black high schools throughout the state of Florida that were either forcefully closed permanently or downgraded into middle schools or vocational schools. Attucks is just a microcosm, like was stated in the beginning. You had North Dade in Opelika, which is where Jo Marie Payton went to. And Jo Marie Payton was in the show Family Matters with Steve Urkel. She was the mom. She went to North Dade High School in Opelika. You had Mays in South Dade. You had George Washington Carver in Coral Gables. You had Carver in Delray. You had Roosevelt in West Palm Beach. You had Roosevelt in Lake Wales. You had many Black high schools that were forcefully closed down. And then you are right. It was a one-way street. Many of the white high schools did not integrate with the Black high schools, but the Black high schools had to be integrated into the white high schools, and it was a quota that was being filled. So it is, to me, the way we talk about racism in this country, whether we talk about the violence or the lynchings or the highways running through, we need to talk about the education of our schools being closed, because our schools were our epicenter to our community. Not only was it just where our children went, but it was where there was community meetings. You in the beginning clip, you seen Eartha Kitt at Attucks High School. There was also many folks like Cab Calloway that came to Attucks. You had James Brown that came to Attucks. You had the Harlem Globetrotters that came to Attucks. You had many people that was there. So it served as an epicenter for our community in many ways. When there was a fight in the school, the next day, the dean of boys or the dean of girls and the principal would sit the students down and solve this issue. But then when integration happened, unfortunately, it was just, okay, 10-day suspension, and it wasn't really fixing the issue. So, you had many Black high schools that suffered this unfortunate fate. And it's something that I feel as if we need to address more. When we look at the Brown v. Board of Education in 1954, which is a great thing, I do believe that integration in the right way can do so much wonders for society as a whole. But in practice, some of it was very one-sided. In the South alone, we waited way later to integrate because the South had many of their own perspectives. And the thing is that in the South, you had over 240,000 teachers that lost their jobs when these Black high schools were closed. And many of the teachers that kept their job had to be able to get something that was just whatever to their liking. So you might have had the greatest science teacher at Attucks High School, and now they're a PE teacher at Miramar, or a custodian or something like that. So, we had to look at those effects of that. Many of the students didn't have teachers that looked like them and didn't really care for them. When you had like schools like Attucks, you had teachers, deans, faculty, and staff was all in the community. And so they all knew each other, and they were all able to help each other and know if this student is acting up, how to be able to help with this student. So there was many ways that one can look at the impact of the closing of this one high school, but then see that it's a microcosm that other schools went through the same thing.
I'm familiar with some of those other schools. Yeah,
Right.
they're magnet schools mostly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, Emmanuel, I am so grateful that how many years ago we met you, and the education you've given our city through us and through your own efforts. We appreciate it so much. You're a great friend to us, and God bless you in your quest.
Oh, and I want to see, and I don't know if y'all seen in the credits, I did give a thank you to the Hollywood Historical Society in the credits for the film. Because I thank y'all as well. Y'all gave me a platform, and I truly believe coming together and us working together in terms of preserving our stories can lead to so many great things. I would love to see a museum in South Broward to honor Attucks High School. I would love to, see these kind of things happening, because we really need to, again, like I can't stress this enough, of preserving our stories. Tomorrow is not promised. I'm seeing you right now. I'm talking to you now, but no telling what could happen tomorrow. And if we don't get a recording of you, or just you sharing your stories of your upbringing, of your life, how much this can do. Imagine what this can do for the next 70 or 80 years, for your great grandchildren can be able to see you and hear you, and maybe even you giving a message to them. There's a lot of beauty in oral history work and in preservation. It could lead to books that can be made about these history tidbits. It could lead to more documentaries. It could lead to podcasts. It could lead to discussions. There's so much work that we can do when it comes to loving our history and doing something about it. And I commend the Hollywood Historical Society for what they're doing. I cannot thank y'all enough.
Thank you very much. And for everyone's information, we have a YouTube channel, Hollywood Historical Society, and we've recorded and posted almost all of the lectures that we've been doing over the years. And I know yours is on there from the past several times that we've had you on. So if anybody's interested, you can follow up on his wonderful lecture today.
Does anybody else have any more questions? So I would just like to say thank you for bringing up newspapers.com, because the Sun Tatler, right, the county library system has our digital files, but we have also taken the digital files because we actually own them. The county, we store them at the county. They're digitizing, but we actually digitize them up to 1973 on newspapers.com. That just happened. So if anybody wants to research anything in the Tatler, which is really Hollywood's newspaper, you won't find stuff in the Sentinel or the Miami News in that time frame that might have been in the Tatler. It's a wealth of information. So thank you for bringing that up. And I use it all the time, Emmanuel. It's fantastic. And the Hollywood Historical Society it's taking us a long time because it's a fluid thing and it keeps changing. We are working on getting a couple historic markers placed in the historic neighborhood of Liberia, because it does date back to the earliest period of Hollywood from 1922, 21, 23, when Joseph Young was laying out the city. Liberia was here with us. So it's part of our original footprint. So we are going to be honoring that history and the people that lived and worked there and died there. So that's great. And thank you again, Emmanuel. I learned a lot today, and it's been fantastic.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on this platform. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And then stay tuned for more. There will be more oral history interviews coming, and I really want the emphasis to be on the work of doing oral history interviews and scanning documents. And and just wanted to say, up next, I am looking to be going to Delray to do a project on Carver, which was their high school, similar to Attucks, that closed in 1970.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Clive. And a special thank you to Emmanuel for your excellent presentation. Karen and everybody from the Hollywood Historical Society, we so enjoy the partnership that the Friends of the Stirling Road Branch Library share. Thank you. We do look forward to seeing you next March the 6th for Being Furr, our Broward County Commissioner presentation, the history of Broward County and Port Everglades. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. And if applicable, enjoy the game tonight. Have a great one.